Hello and welcome to Shop Franklin, supporting small business, where we're going to talk about how we can support, raise awareness of, and build community around Franklin's local independently owned businesses. My name is Sarah Mabardi. Today with me we have Linda Waters of Back to Business. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, you help people who are getting back to business.
Yes, I do.
So, I am confident that we will have a fabulous conversation about how you help others in this task. So tell me, how did you become back to business?
Well, it was kind of a mistake, really.
The best things are.
So I was in corporate for about 20 years in high-tech sales and client management. And I hit I think a 40-something moment where I started to think, where am I going with this? What's my purpose in life? And I wanted to have a more authentic life, and I was tired of the stupid politics, and I just needed to take a break. And I was also traveling a lot. My kids were small.
You were traveling internationally.
Yes. I had great travel. I was in Brussels and Amsterdam. It was great. There was nothing wrong with this job. What happened is I changed.
Fancy.
But it was a high visibility, very successful. I had negotiated a 3-day work week so I could spend more time being a mom.
Nice.
But it just, over time, we changed, and I changed. And so I needed to do something different. And I knew that if I did the same kind of job, which is what I've always done and all I ever knew, I would land in the same darn place in 3 years. So I had to change it up. And so I struggled for a while not knowing what to do next. Mm-hmm. And I had a bunch of different ideas, but...
So did you leave your prior position?
Yes.
And have a time where you were
quit.
just figuring things out?
Yes.
That's bold.
I had to get out of there because I had to get my head fresh, and I just couldn't move on until I was free of it. And I had to just take some time and, like you said, decompress. So I wound up working with women on a project, and I just started finding that these women that I was working with were always focusing on what they didn't have, and not focusing on what they do have. And
we tend to do that.
We do. It's human nature. And so, because the things that we're naturally good at are like breathing air to us. We don't think twice about them. We don't find them very special at all. We just do them. So I started working with women, and I had somebody who came to me and said, well, you've got a business background. Can you help me with my resume? And I said, sure, what's the problem? And she said, I have my resume. I have to get back into the workforce. My daughter's going off to college, and nobody will talk to me. What's wrong with me? And she started to cry. And I thought, oh, this is horrible. She's this wonderful person, wonderful family, in every volunteer capacity in town. And I thought, this is too much. Somebody needs to unstick these fabulous women. And of course, I didn't think I had anything to offer them. Somebody needs to do it.
Yes. Has to do it.
Yes. So over time, people started asking me to help them with their resumes because I speak the language because I lived in the country of business. So I just have the business vernacular because I've been using it for 20 years. So it's not rocket science, really. All I did was start helping people put business language to what they've been doing.
And don't discount it. Yes, it's not rocket science because it's like breathing. You just do it.
Yeah.
But
don't apologize.
it's a talent.
Yeah, and we all have great talents. We didn't just, go blank when we had babies. Of course not. So it became a passion for me because I found that so many people were just paralyzed, kind of like the way I was before I got rolling with Back to Business. So I was kind of lost. I had no idea what to do, and this lady changed my life. Can I tell you the story?
Please do. That's the whole point. Life-changing moments are kind of important. Let's talk about it.
Well, she did change my life. So I was in a dog store.
Which is where the most profound things happen? In a dog store?
Apparently so. So I'm in this dog store, and I'm shopping around, and this woman said, so tell me what you do. And I said, well, I'm waiting for my epiphany. And she was like, oh boy. She said, do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, well, I was thinking of this. I was thinking of that. I just couldn't find anything that was resonating with me. And so she looked at me after listening for a bit and said, you need to quiet down and trust your process. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I'm a type A control freak business person. If I don't worry about every single thing, it'll all come crashing down like a house of cards. And I lived like that until I learned that you don't have to live like that.
You can trust your process.
Well, it was just a little too fluffy for me, and I couldn't get my head around it really. It was too vague. And so she said, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it angels, you can call it intuition, whatever works for you, but your process is unfolding every day. You just don't realize it because you're trying to make something that you don't know what it is. So if you're trying to manufacture something you don't know what it is, how's that working for you? And I'm like, it's not working. So for lack of a better idea, I decided to just let myself go quiet and just try to breathe and let things, see if an idea will pop into my head. And that's right around the time that this woman came to see me, and that's how Back to Business was started. And I had clients before I even had a name for it.
And when was this?
This was 10 years ago in June.
Okay.
So
almost
in
exactly
2005, 2000, well, it's actually, 6. And I just started doing a bunch of research with every human resource manager and hiring manager I could get my hands on. And they all said the same thing. So what I was looking for is, what are we doing right as moms returning? What are we doing wrong? What's your definition of flexibility? Because mine might be different. And I had negotiated several versions of flex over my years in corporate. So I wound up finding that they all said the same thing to me. I could have just interviewed the same people and been done with it, like 3 people, because there was a list of 7 things that were holding the women back, and what the women thought the hiring people wanted and what the people actually wanted were disparate.
Okay.
So I made
and
it,
all of the hiring managers had the same
they said the
common
same
thread
exact things
in them.
Yes.
And all of the primarily women returning to the workforce were saying the same thing as, I'm lacking. And they're saying, well, no.
Yeah. And
we're looking for something that you have.
Yes. And exactly. And so they weren't marketing themselves properly, generally speaking. So then this was before the recession started, when it became fashionable to be like a career coach. So I talked to one guy that I could find that focused in careers, and I asked, where do you start? He said, we start with the resume, and I thought, oh, that's not where my clients need to start. They need to answer questions like, who am I now? I don't even know who I am anymore, because I've spent the last X years worrying about everybody except for myself. And what are my natural strengths and talents? Well, I don't know. I just went from job to job, and then marriage and family, and here I am. And so that's where I felt that it was more effective for them to start, because how can you write a directed resume if you have no idea how to even answer the question, so tell me about yourself? So a lot of moms would be like, tell me about yourself. Oh, well, my husband does this, and my kids play soccer, and da-da-da. And that's not what they're looking for at all.
I can completely understand that. I think I saw something recently. It says, my interests... I'm a stay-at-home mom, or I'm a mom. My interests are using the restroom by myself in private and sneaking in a 5-minute nap. And that's her interest. And, I've had the privilege of staying home with my children for a number of years, and will be re-entering the workforce. And I can see exactly where you're speaking to. I have accomplished so much in the time that I've been home with my children through volunteer efforts and everything, but I still have those doubts of, but I've been gone for so long. What do I do? What do I do? So everything you're saying speaks so intimately to me, and I can relate so much to what you have out there.
Well, and you're not alone. And very often people feel like they're in this by themselves, and that's just not true. There are a lot of people in the same boat, just trying to work it out. Like, what's life anyway? It's messy, and we're here to just try and bungle through it and do the best we can, right? And the same with the job search is, there's a method to it, though. It's not like this big, confusing, painful thing. Like, I think it feels like you're standing at the bottom of a very tall mountain that has clouds around the top, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate that. And it doesn't have to be that way, though. It doesn't have to be. There's a path.
There's actually a path going up the mountain that maybe we're just not seeing clearly, but the path is there, and someone just has to point you in the right direction.
Yes. So based on the research I created, very simply, it's a finite process, because I'm very results oriented, and it's a sequence of things to do. And so it's my job to remove every and any obstacle that a woman might have, from the handshake to, I've taken women bra shopping. We've been to Lord & Taylor for suits. So we follow the whole entire path from the assessments. So the first meeting is about career assessments and personality assessments, and they actually give you really good tips on how to be better in business and business communications. And we use them to help create excellent interview questions so that when you go to an interview, you can find out pretty quickly whether it's a good culture fit for you. Because it's one thing to get a job. It's another thing to find a culture where you're going to be received and respected and successful.
And I think that's something that we've talked about in the past, in times that we've spoken, that differentiates you, where you're not looking to get someone a job. Anyone can get a job. What you do when working with people who are transitioning, and maybe not even being out of the workforce for a while, but transitioning even within the workforce to different careers, or if they've been in the same job for a while and going to something else, isn't just getting a job, but finding a job that will fill that cup for you. Well, finding the opportunity that you will enjoy going to, and that, like you said, matches your desire, the kind of environment that you want to be in, both from a structured hours, location, all that, but also what kind of community is it? And so we've talked about that in the past, is finding not just a job, but that. And that's something that you really focus on.
Oh, I believe culture is everything. I mean, you have to spend your whole day with these people. And so oftentimes when I'm in speaking engagements, people ask me, is there age discrimination? Well, yeah, there's everything discrimination. So the trick is to find out where it is and find the right fit for yourself, and by asking the right questions.
And so these assessments help you guide that.
Yep, they guide us through the whole entire process. And of course, the better I know you, the more effective I can be at helping you. And we also, of course, it's not just, find the thing that lights you up. It's also, how much money do you need to make? How many hours can you work realistically? Because we want the moms to get out there and blow everybody away. We know that if you give us a little flexibility and some, good, challenging, fun work to do, you're going to get so much more out of us. And companies are getting it now. First of all, the job market's pretty good right now. But second, companies go to meetings to discuss how to find us. Women getting back into the workforce, they don't realize that companies they're clamoring for us.
Because they offer a skill set and a level of dedication that maybe someone just coming out of school, and that knowledge of, we're coming back because this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
We need to do it. We want to do it. We're committed to it, as opposed to this is a transition or a stepping stone to somewhere else.
Right.
Well, instead of training someone, they have someone that's invested in them as well.
Yep. And we have perspective. We've had our babies. We're reliable.
In your experience, do you ever have someone that comes to you and then through the process walks away doing something completely different than they expected, or different from what they've done in the past?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it happens all the time. A lot of times people started with what they used to do or what they think they're only capable of doing. A lot of people, we have MBAs that think they should be an admin. And first of all, admins have specific skill sets. And second, why? Why would you do that when it's not something that you really want to do? So a lot of people feel that they're forced to do things because people will only hire them for certain things, when we know that that's not true. And I'll tell you a fun story. I had a client who, and she allows me to tell this story, and she was an adjunct professor in history and government.
Okay.
And she was just tired of having a job, but then not having a job, being brought in for a class and not, and she was just tired. She was tired of it. She'd been doing it forever. And we did her assessments, and she was like a ball of fire. She just had this bouncy, she barely sits still. She was this bouncy, fun person. And we were talking, and I saw some things in the assessments that kind of tweaked my interest in, and I said to her, do you like old people? And she said, I love old people because I get to talk to them about history, and that's what I really know. And I'm like, I think you should be a recreation director at a nursing home or an assisted living facility. And she was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do that, always, my whole life. So why don't you do it? Well, I don't have any experience. Well, why don't you go get some? And she wound up going for it. And the process built enough confidence in her that she put herself out there. We wrote the resume toward a residential recreation director, and she got a job 4 miles away from her house, which she is years ago. She's still there, and she is a happy camper. And they hired her for like a ton of money more than she was expecting to make.
That's always a good thing.
That's amazing. Doesn't happen every day. But
well, let's see if we can make that happen.
People make career changes on average 6 times in their lives.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think the industry or the idea or the culture around it has changed, whereas generations ago you went to a job, you stayed at a job, you got pension, you had retirement benefits, maybe not, but you stayed in a career and you stayed at a company and you got pins every 5 years and you might get a watch at your 50th year, or your retirement watch. And that's not how it is today. And both from, I think, the employee or the person being hired, but also the people hiring. So many companies are in flux. You don't have those long-term companies that have the longevity. They're either getting bought or transitioning, or they're changing ideas or models, and we see that all of the time. So it is more common to see someone go from opportunity to opportunity.
Yes. And sometimes my clients find they want to do something more entrepreneurial. It's one of the reasons I love Shop Franklin, because you're supporting small local businesses and this, I don't remember the statistic, but it's an inordinate amount of people are being hired by small business.
I think it's
these
something
days.
Of 80%.
It's big.
It's a majority of employed persons in the country are by independently owned businesses, small businesses. And that is what I love about it too, is because many people will know I'm not someone who works within a box. It's very hard for me to go in and have a structure, and that's why I think I love the small businesses, because they're going in and they're living their passion. Absolutely living their passion, and you can see it when you talk to them, when you talk about what you do. You can feel the excitement about it and the enthusiasm, and to support that and know that what we are doing as a community with Shop Franklin is encouraging someone in their dream and allowing them to provide for their families. That's why it's so important to me. So even with Shop Franklin, you can see I'm excited about it, because I enjoy doing this, and you can see it. So to find ways for people to do that in their positions is huge. So,
and I love what I do. I mean, I get to take people from paralyzed. Usually by the time they find me, they don't even know what to do. I mean, I've got tissue boxes strategically placed behind the doors in my office.
Well, that's a great point, because a lot of times life transitions foster or a need to change careers.
Yes.
So different points in life that may be stressful create a need to go back to work or change jobs, or if you've been laid off or you're in transition. So it's a very emotional
It can be.
process.
Everyone's journey is different, which is why it's a one-on-one process, not a group. And the drivers for returning to the workforce are everything from, I'm older, my daughter's older, I want to show her that I can have a career, to divorce is often a driver for getting back into the workforce. So I get the fun part. I get to help them rebuild.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, that's the fun part.
And my impression is you're very good at it.
Well, thank you.
So, Linda, you had mentioned earlier that there's a process, that as much as we all look and see this mountain with the clouds on top trying to figure out how to get there, there is an actual process. And we are lucky enough that you know this process, and you are going to impart that to us today.
Yes.
So tell us about your presentation today.
Okay, so what I did is put together a slide deck outlining all the components of the job search. What I did is I put together a slide deck outlining all of the components of the job search. And I could do a whole segment on each one of these, but I just put together a few tips for each one just to kind of get people rolling. It's general, but hopefully it'll be helpful. So before you do anything, I think I said this earlier, you need to know what you want. You need to understand and have clarity in your direction. Like, you can't go to a job interview and say, well, I don't know, what do you need? People can't connect the dots like that, so you need to do it. So having clarity, finding a coach or somebody to do assessments with you to help you find yourself is a good structured way. It can be very validating. Or even just, starting to make lists of different ideas by combing the internet and Indeed, understanding that most job postings are asking for you to be like 5 different people in one.
Okay.
And a lot of people can get discouraged by looking online, but it's not necessary.
It's like that's their
they want
list,
you to be like
their
the
ideal candidate.
Yeah, and the sales guy and the webmaster.
confines. And they're limited to what they can put out there too. So they can't say we're looking for, all these different characteristics that are going to make the position what they need it. So they're in a box.
Yes.
And they're trying to attract in. And just like a resume does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more.
So once you understand what you're going for, then you can write a directed resume that makes sense.
Okay.
So on back to clarity of direction. Writing a list of what your natural strengths and talents are. What transferable skills have you developed in your volunteer work? So people think of their volunteer work, but they don't realize that we gravitate naturally toward what we're good at. So I've seen people that had been in finance, and now they're the treasurer for the PTO or whatever your town calls it. So they're still maintaining transferable skills and keeping skills sharp. And I always tell the moms, think about what you're doing for volunteer work. Are you helping yourself? Is this serving you by keeping skills sharp or creating new skills? I'm going to back for 1 second. So the last thing to think about is, who am I and what business environment do I want to work in? So if I'm a quiet worker and I'm more reserved and I don't like busy and craziness all around, I'm not going to go work at a broadcast press room because things are constantly changing. If I'm an organized person that likes to work my plan and plan my work, I don't want to be with a bunch of people that are deadline driven and sliding in at the last minute, because it's just not the right fit for me. So taking stock of your style and being able to pinpoint it and even concisely communicate it is really important.
I think that concisely communicated is key too, is practicing it and knowing it, and when you do that, you can give that what we call the elevator pitch.
Yes, and that's coming up. And, as women, we're trained to not talk about what we're good at. We're trained to be more humble and subdued. So it can be awkward unless you're really prepared. Preparation is everything. You don't just hop on a bicycle and start riding. So the next part is the resume. There are I could go on forever about the resume. One thing I want to point out is that people spend a ton of time and money on the resume, but the resume's role in the circle is to get you in the door. It's not where you get hired. So they forget to prepare for the interview. So we'll go through some tips on the resume, and then we'll move into more of the interview stuff. But there are things in terms of like the pages. People always want to know, how many pages can I have? 2 pages is fine. If you put in 3, they'll take you out without even looking at you.
So back in my day, I'm dating myself a bit here, it was 1 page, and you manipulated the fonts and the borders and everything to make sure you were down to 1 page.
Yes.
And that was the hard, fast rule.
Yep.
And then in this transition, so there can be 2 pages. So 2 pages is the maximum, because otherwise you have too much.
Yeah, and I'm going to one-up you on the dating myself. I remember when we used to have our resumes typeset. Long time ago. When you want to get your resume to the other side of the search engine, because that's a really big challenge, one trick is to take your job description, because it's expected that you'll tweak your resume for each job that you're going to post for, and use keywords that apply to you, let's be honest, and inject them into the summary section of the top of your resume. So, if they're looking for organizational skills, call those out, because the bots are going to look for word matches in the system.
That's a good point, because it's not just someone looking at a piece of paper. In today's environment, we have logarithms that will pull information and bring things to the front. So if you're on any of these networking or application processes, they'll see what gets fed them, or they'll do keyword searches. And so that's really important to know.
Yes, they're called applicant tracking systems.
Applicant tracking systems. There you are. That wasn't around when I was applying for jobs.
So a couple of other things in terms of font. Boring is better because it doesn't get jumbled up, and you have so many different kinds of computer and software versions looking at this that you want to make sure that it's solid and you don't get tossed because of an error. So saving your resume to PDF format keeps it whole. If you're doing it online, you change it to a text file, and only use fonts that are smallest is 11. Otherwise, it's an eye chart. So 11 or 12 point fonts, Arial and Times New Roman. So those are my resume little tips. As far as cover letters go, people struggle with the cover letter, and there are tools online that you can use. MyPerfectCoverletter.com is one that kind of helps you cobble together things, and it gets you started. But a cover letter basically gives you the opportunity to say things that you can't say on a resume. A little bit more personable, a little bit more about returning to the workforce, why you're interested in the industry, why you're interested in that company. You understand they're looking for this, well, you have this, and then you ask at the end for the interview.
What does an ask sound like at the end of the cover letter?
I think I would be a great fit for ABC Company. I can offer you blah, blah, and blah, because your approach to it shouldn't be, what can you do for me? It should be, here's what you get when you buy me. So you want to make sure that you're aligning your skills to the job requirement. So you're looking for someone with a finance background, and this is addressing the gap, my least favorite word, by saying I've been out for 17 years raising my family. It's been a wonderful experience. And as you can see from my resume, I've been keeping my skills sharp by being the president of the PTO and running a whole entire Facebook page or, all the different things where you're demonstrating your computer skills and your ability to do the job. They just want to know if you can do the job.
And then I look forward to meeting with you to discuss how I can make a contribution.
I would like to discuss this further in person, and I will follow up with you next week.
I look forward to talking to you about this. So actually anticipate that we will be meeting to discuss it further.
You can do that, or you can just say, I would like to meet with you to talk about it further. So if you don't ask, nothing happens.
Exactly.
It's scary, though.
How many people forget to put that out there, and
people do. They kind of come short of the close.
Finish the goal line. They're the 5-yard line or the 1-yard line.
So the purpose of the resume and cover letter to get you in the door, and I will say the importance of the cover letter is huge. They some people won't even look at you if you didn't bother to take the time to write a cover letter, because they assume that you're not interested.
And I will throw this out there, which may seem obvious, but make sure you tailor your cover letter to each job, not just in manipulating the wording, but the addresses and the name and who you're addressing. Because in my experience, I've heard so many stories, even recently with small businesses locally, where they'll get an application and there'll be an error in the cover letter.
Put the wrong company.
Putting the wrong company or addressing the wrong person or not changing a date or something, where it's very clear that they're cutting and pasting.
Yes.
And so that I think is really important. So I know that's probably stating the obvious, but in my world, nothing's obvious. That very often there are things that we're missing that we need to be reminded of, because we're moving so fast nowadays. So that's really important.
Well, I'll tell you a little story about a resume blunder. So when I'm doing resumes with my clients, I teach them how to write it themselves. They don't depend on me. And where on the resume you customize the information for the job you're posting for. And I'll ambush them. So I call their cell phone while they're sitting there. And it's interesting, number one, to see if it's on. Second, it's interesting to see what the recording is, because people record their voicemail message. This is your first line of exposure to people. So the best one was, "Hi, it's Marie. Can't find my phone right now. It's probably in the back seat with the French fries and the kids. I'll call you when I find it. Bye." And that
doesn't
it's hysterical,
to
but it's not appropriate for the job search.
Reality. So that's my reality. Perception. So creating that perception of a professional, putting out there, if that number is on your resume, you need to be professional in that, as if you're in that role.
Yes.
If someone calls you.
Well, you just want to have a consistent and professional,
not
persona,
French fry
brand. Yeah, not French. Well, or the kids will say, "Hi, my mom's not here right now," and it's adorable, but it's not appropriate for the job search.
And I'm going to take us off track a little bit, but actually it actually leads beautifully into social media. You just used the word brand.
Yes.
So we talk a lot about brand when presenting a product or a company. There's a brand, but we're our own brand, and we need to present ourselves, and what do we want to convey? And I think that's a great lead-in to social media is, what is your brand? Because in today's environment, you have a brand whether you like it or not, and it's out there. So how do you continue the professionalism of your brand on social media?
Well, okay, so I have a little exercise that I do sometimes with people, which is to write down 3 adjectives that you would want someone to use about you after walking away from talking with them. And it's interesting when the room starts to share some of the things that you hear. And so you need to keep those adjectives in mind when you're talking with people, because your brand is being created every minute of every day. And you should be mindful about it rather than letting it create itself.
Yeah.
So on social media, the first lesson, and it seems like stating the obvious, but a lot of people don't do this. Shut down your privacy settings, clean it up. People that are posting stuff on your wall, hide them, turn it down. Just make sure, because these people are going to look you up. And they're going to look you up on every social media avenue to see what they can find. And I've seen people get jobs and lose them before their first day.
Wow.
Because of what they found on social media. So it's really important. Google yourself is a fun one. There's a Linda Waters with little cat ears drinking a martini on Google.
It's not you?
It's not me.
It's not you?
No. Well, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. So
it's not really her.
It's not. So but she was probably having a lot more fun than I was.
But that's a great point, because if someone Googles your name, they may not know what you look like. And so that image that comes up, if that Linda Waters is the first one they see, they need to dig deeper to find the Linda Waters that's applying for the position. So they may look at that and say, oh, there's Linda Waters.
They do.
And so if you Google Sarah Mabardi, I don't recommend you do that at home. I think there's a college student who has a very broad web presence that will most likely come up.
Interesting.
So,
but they'll match your college, where you went to college, and where you're from.
Yeah.
So, but it's better for you to know what's out there before they do.
Yeah.
So, and just talking about the different social media avenues. So, LinkedIn is like your black book online. All of your contacts, your business contacts. This is not. I had a donut yesterday, and it's where you keep your contacts and you have access to your friends directly, or your links, your first string, and then theirs. So that's second tier, and then theirs. So the amount of contacts that you make on LinkedIn is like exponential.
So it's like 5 degrees, or what is it, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon? Or everyone's
6 degrees of separation.
6, yeah, the whole idea.
Yes, it's 3.
3, okay. For Kevin Bacon, is that it?
I think it's right.
Everyone's connected to Kevin Bacon by 3 degrees. I don't know what mine is.
I think you're connected to everyone by like 2.
Yeah,
1,
probably.
maybe 1.
I just know everybody, I guess.
Yes, you do.
But yeah, no, that's really important. So LinkedIn is a great format to present yourself in a professional way, because people are actively looking at who's right. Someone may proactively not find you, but come across your profile and searching for something.
Yep. People get on, and you can look for jobs on LinkedIn. There are tons posted.
Really?
You can use LinkedIn to do your research before an interview, so that you can look up the company, and you can find. So what I always recommend is, once you've put the resume into the big abyss, go onto LinkedIn and find out who you know at that company and how you're connected. You may have to ask for an introduction, but see if you can find somebody at that company who you can talk to about the culture there, or maybe would say, oh, well, I know somebody, I could help you with that, because that's your networking in. Twitter, you've got 140 characters. You can post stuff, but keep it professional. Instagram's pictures. I really don't think Snapchat is appropriate for the job search.
Not yet.
But
Who
I
knows
stick
where
with
it will come from?
God knows. So next is your elevator pitch. So this is your 30 to 60 second, who are you? Tell me about yourself. Nobody likes that question, but we have to learn how to answer it. Just like you said, you have to practice and practice and practice and make it concise.
Because my elevator pitch would be like 3 hours, and the person would be walking away backwards by the time I was done, and say, okay, thank you. So yeah, and then that's hard, because you want to present yourself in a concise way, but we're also multifaceted, and you don't know who you're talking to. So you really need to keep it neutral and direct. And how do you do that?
Yes.
But compelling.
So the elevator pitch, like you said, it's not the full story, but it's a brief synopsis of what you're all about. It's not about your kids. It's not about anybody but you. So I made a little template for people to use. You can addressing the gap. I was fortunate enough to take 7 years to raise my family. As you can see from my resume, I've got my skills sharp by doing this and this. And if you don't feel like you have some of that, go out and get a volunteer position, and with the purpose of sharpening the computer skills or whatever it is that you feel you need. I think I'd be a great fit for this position because I can XYZ, and then always follow with a question. So even when you're networking and delivering your elevator pitch, you can just say, so that's me. So how long have you been working here? What do you love about working here?
Because people love talking about themselves.
Yes, they do.
And it redirects it, and you can learn more about the person to start that conversation.
Yes, and if you're uncomfortable, it's a great way to calm down because you can be the listener. Sorry, I flipped the slides. So building your elevator pitch is, I'm returning to the workforce. I have a background in finance, and I help organizations solve their financial confusion by putting a system together or getting them ordered, whatever it is that you do. But if you could focus on how you help people and the value that you deliver, it's really helpful for people to understand that. Like, you help people connect by running a really good, positive Facebook page that delivers value to companies because it's a great place to go for resources, something like that. And I'm hoping to transition into being your webmaster, ideally, in whatever it is your industry. Does that make sense? It's just kind of a little bit of a... and so then we have networking. Networking is everything. Networking, over 80% of jobs are gotten by networking.
And you never know who knows who knows who.
Yeah, you never. It's like LinkedIn. You don't know whose husband works for da da da. And I, in this whole process, I find that people really do want to help. Like, the way you ask for help, you can do it. There are right ways and wrong ways, but people really typically enjoy helping. Have you ever been instrumental in getting somebody a job? It's a blast. It feels so good. So just, again, things that we already know, but don't forget that firm handshake. Don't forget to make eye contact with the person so that they know you're listening to them. And most people's smiles light up a room. So don't be so nervous that you can't smile. Like, try and smile and be an active listener and have some questions ready. I think going to a networking event with the intent of finding 3 people that you can help today. It has you asking all the right questions and doing all the right things because you're trying to figure out what they need and how you can help them. And then, of course, they want to help you in return.
And networking, as much as it's very often spontaneous, whereas you're talking to someone and having a conversation, so the dialogue, you can't anticipate where it's going to go. But you can practice that, too, because you're always going to have that introduction. So you do the elevator pitch, or you have your standard leading question, or if something that I always do is I meet a lot of people in different contexts of how I know them, and sometimes I might not recognize them out of context, and I always say, it's nice to see you. So I very rarely say it's nice to meet you, because then I sabotage it if we've met before. So I say, it's nice to see you.
That's a good strategy.
Coming up with these ways to connect with people and also disarm yourself and, like you said, redirect the conversation to them and say, it's nice to see you. Oh, what are you doing here? Or how did you know about this event?
Yep, or how do you know Sarah? And that you talk for a little bit. In networking events, what you don't want to do is commandeer the whole night. Or event for somebody. I mean, you're there to network, so you can say, I would love to talk with you more about that. Can we exchange cards? And then you have a chance to follow up with the person and go into a little bit more depth.
That's a great point, because a lot of times when we go to these networking events as business owners or as individuals or job seekers, we don't know a lot of people. And so we may want to go towards a safe person, or we start a conversation that becomes safe and you stay in that place. But you need to network. So, even practicing a transition out statement and say, I've really enjoyed talking to you about this. I'm going to go speak with so-and-so, but maybe we can pick this up another time, or maybe we can have coffee later this week. So have a transition statement in and out of your conversations and practice that.
Well, usually people know that. I think usually people know that. So once you say, I'd like to talk to you about this further, let's exchange cards. Once the cards are exchanged, it usually...
transitions out
all by itself. It's usually not very awkward.
So perfect.
A lot of people, like I said about having a mindset around networking, that I want to help people because especially as women, we want to help people. We love to help people. It's what makes us happy, although we can't stand asking for help ourselves, of course.
Very true.
But so here are some of the questions that you were talking about. Tell me what you do. How can I help you? Because everyone's there looking for answers. Where else do you network is also a good one, so you can find out maybe some other
That's good.
venues. Okay, so the interview is like the resume. It could go on and on, but I want to tell you that I have a discount on my website for Interview Mastery videos. It's a whole series. I think there are 44 videos on everything about interviewing, from the behavioral interview, which is tell me about a time when you ... to what's a good interview versus not a good interviewer, and just it gives you so much confidence, and it covers everything. It's brilliant. It's not my product, but it's on my blog on Back to Business, and it's done by a gentleman named Michael Neese, and it's just a really helpful tool.
So that's a good point, that there's resources out there for this that could be instrumental to getting a job.
Yes.
And a lot of times when you're going back, you have an upfront cost for some things, but getting the right job and having that competitive advantage pays itself back.
Yes,
so
it does. So you want to do your homework and be prepared. Go using LinkedIn to find out if your interviewer, what if they went to the same college that you did? What if there's some other kind of bond in a hobby or something? So doing your research is really important, because then you can understand what the value is that you can bring to that company. You can understand their mission, where they're trying to go, and kind of think about how you might be able to add significant value there. And there are a lot of different places to get information. Everyone has a website. You can go on LinkedIn. You can use Hoover's. And then preparing your interview questions like we talked about before, so that you can find out if it's the right kind of work environment. So my favorite question is, tell me about your best people and what makes them really good at what they do. And you'll get a character assessment. So I one time had somebody that I worked for, and they said, they would say, I can send an email out to my team, and they'll at 2:00 in the morning, and they'll all answer me. Well, run from that. So, but there are people
that what I want to.
You get it's instead of them saying, oh, we're this, we're that, we're this, we're that. You kind of, it's a different way to see what's really in their list of qualifications, and use the answer to that to your advantage, and say, well, I am blah, 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 blah.
As someone who worked the night before her wedding, and many weekends and many late nights, I know that question is probably a good one.
It's a good question. Well, we like our people that work the night before their wedding.
Yes. Not so much. So no, that's really important, because you're right. It's a huge character assessment of that individual, who in most cases is going to be your boss or someone that you report to in some hierarchy, and also the culture of the company.
And in this point of the process, we've done the personality assessment, so you know what kind of work style you have. You know what kind of environment's good for you, and that's part of the building of the interview questions. And then we have what is everyone's problem, which is how to not be nervous during an interview, because you want to relax and let them know who you are, so we can see if there's a fit. It's like speed dating. Hi, do we have a fit? No problem, bye. Because it's not personal. We take it personally, but it's not personal. So, and it's not an interrogation. It's two adults having a conversation to find out if you can solve their problem.
And what I find in an interview when talking to someone, we talked a lot in other conversations in here, that women in particular tend to devalue themselves. And when you're interviewing, you feel like you're in a position of they're interviewing you. And I think it's so important to remember that you're interviewing them too. You have something to offer, and you want to make sure that they are what you want to be part of.
You have to live there.
Yeah, you have to spend a ton of time there, and they control so much of your daily life. That is so important for people to remember, that it's not all about, am I going to be good enough for them? Remember, are they going to be good enough for me?
Well,
and I think that's huge.
It's a mutual business discussion. That's really all it is. And if you can see it that way, you can be yourself. And sometimes hiring managers just know if you wouldn't be a fit, even if you're perfect on paper. And you have to trust them that they're doing the right thing for you.
Trust the process. In a different
Trust your process. Trust your interviewer. So this is a picture of a crumpled world. Everyone has a crumpled world. Sometimes it's more crumpled than others, but everyone has a story. You don't get to be our age without texture and, a story. And so you also want to remember to be kind when you go into that interview, because you don't know if that person's dog died or if they're in danger of losing their job, or you just don't know what's going on with people. So it's really important to remember this is a human being, and try and be kind. Step out of yourself for a minute and think about how the other person is. That just gives you a whole different vibe, really.
And that's a huge part of the whole community experience, is realizing that we all have our journey. We're all in our story. We're all creating it and discovering and respecting that.
Yep. And so the last is follow-up. So people, both with networking and with the interview, follow-up is imperative. What's the point if you don't follow up? So people ask me, is it better to send an email because it's fast, or a thank you note? And the answer is yes, because each follow-up is an opportunity to get in front of them. That's and remind them that you're really interested and you're committed and you're perfect for the job. So email is, the thank yous need to be genuine. Like you said about the cover letters, they need to be individual. We've had people send thank you notes out, cookie cutter thank you notes, and each of the 3 people that were involved in the interviewing process compared notes.
And they're the exact same note.
They did not get hired because it was just so clear that they didn't put the effort into it. So think of something that how you connected with the person that's interviewing, and remember that, and think of something, it was so interesting to meet you. I loved blah, blah, blah. And the more I think about it, the more I realize I think it's a great fit. I'm very, very interested in meeting with you again. It's just an example. And then...
But actually, refer to something in your individual conversation. Because you're right, very often when you're interviewing, especially later on in the process, you will meet with more than one person on a single day. They're very efficient in that process, and you may go to 1, 2, 3, and making sure that you do identify a connection with each of those individuals.
And take notes. Just when you're in the interview, say, would you mind if I take notes? And what are they going to say? No. So just having little things so that you can follow up and feel good about the way you're following up. And every time you can get in front of them, that's a good opportunity. So hopefully this has helped. I know it's general, but I hope it's been helpful, just giving you a couple of tips.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it is, you're right, there's so much to it, and you could bring so much more into it, but that's where take the responsibility and step up and look into those things. And it is intimidating. So even that simple processing, it's not rocket science. There is a process. There is a journey up that mountain, and it's kind of a light hike. But what you invest, you're going to get back, and hopefully in the right position. So,
want a job?
Desperately. Are you hiring?
Well done. You get it.
Thank you. Linda, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for Shop Franklin, supporting small business. I am Sarah Mabardi, and I'll see you around town.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.